طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا Muhammad. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Ayman for inviting us this weekend. If we get nothing else out of it, we got to see Gulf of Mexico, so that's always a plus. And I'm very happy and honored to be here with you. It's not too many people who decide to take their Thanksgiving Day break, a Thanksgiving weekend, to come and listen to something about religion, a lecture, or something like that. So that's something to be applauded and commended and celebrated. So I had these series of lectures I did last year that were kind of more about practical topics I thought that people were thinking about. And I think one of the things that comes up a lot, especially with young people, and you'd be surprised some older people as well, is kind of how do we navigate the relationship with members of the opposite sex? At work, at school, out the street. And I think we see on a practical level a lot of what we would say tanaqudat, a lot of what's the word? Contradictions. English is actually my first language, but sometimes I have lots of words. So there's a lot of contradictions. You may hear one thing and the people are actually doing something else and it doesn't seem right, and that type of thing. And so I think what I'm going to try to do is try to address that question, and I want to make it more of a dialogue than a monologue. I want to hear from you guys too, because I'm a couple of years removed from kind of the college, high school environment, more than a couple of years actually. So what I had done last year, I kind of, in this series, so I like the picture, that's why I wanted to show you the picture on the projector. He or she is neither family or spouse. How do we deal with each other? Is it okay to say salam alaikum or hi? Is it okay to ask about their day? Or is that not right? You know, can we study together? Can we go to Starbucks together or not? So these are the type of things that people, I think, often think about. And I think the way I looked at it is we start off with the foundation, the basic thing. And this is important too, especially in light of even new topics that have come up now with gender fluidity and transgender and people mixed up about their gender and things like that. We as Muslims, or people who strive to be Muslim, we believe that every single thing that was created and the way that it was created was for a reason. There's a divine wisdom behind it. Nothing is by accident, right? Nothing is like, you know, it happened this way and it should have been another way. No, it's the way it's supposed to be, exactly. And the reason we know this has to go back to our belief in Allah, that He could have done anything He wanted. And one of the things that we know is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not obligated to do anything. This is a very important aspect of what we believe. No one can make Him do everything. He's not obligated to do anything. In other words, does He have to forgive me? No, He doesn't have to forgive you. Does He have to put me in heaven? No, He doesn't have to. So if He's not obligated, that means He chooses to, which is the difference. When you choose to do something versus someone forces you or have to do or compels you to do something. So that means Allah chose this. Me, you, us being here, Allah chose that. We could have had 3 genders, right? Or 4. Could have not. We could have had 1. We could have been like the plants who are asexual and we need bees to cross-pollinate. We could have been like that, but we're not. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in pairs, and in fact He created everything in pairs. Right? وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. So not only is it He chose it, but He's telling you to think about it. We've created everything in pairs so that you may recall, you may remember. Remember whom? Remember Allah. There's a wisdom behind it. So that means this idea of pairs, it's not just about male and female in human beings, it's in everything. Right? You have day and night. The night is almost upon us, then the day follows. There's a wisdom behind that, there's a reason behind that. You have spring and summer, fall and winter. You have things in pairs. You have light and darkness, black and white, moving and not moving, high and low, tall and short. wide and narrow. So all of these things that seem to be in pairs or some degrees in between them, there's a wisdom behind that, right? And we can say that there are certain things that are more masculine in nature, masculine properties. And there are certain things that are more feminine in nature, feminine traits. And in order for the world to function, in order for the universe to function, you need what? Both of them. Can't work with one. It will never work with one. So that means there's no better than the other. We don't say men are better than women, or women are better than men, or being a male is better than being a female, or the day is better than the night, or the night is better than the day, right? In what we say in an absolute sense, maybe in specific, yes, the night is better for sleeping, and the day is better for working, and the Quran says as much. But in an absolute sense, is the day better than the night, night better than the day? No, because you need both. You can't function without both, right? You need to be at rest and sleeping at some point, and you know to be doing as well. So that means the idea of male and female, and in men and women is necessary, or Allah chose it to be the way He wants this universe, the way He wants this world to run. So that's important. We start off with that, right? And so we shouldn't think it's like a competition between males and females or men and women, or that there is a standard we establish and it says that everything that a man can do, a woman should also be to do that. And you hear that a lot. But I think the wiser thing to say, in light of what I just said, is a woman can do everything a man cannot do, rather than the opposite. And a man can do things that women can't do either. So then we call that complementary relationship, not antagonistic. Complementary means the things I can't do, you do. And the things that I can do and you can't do, I do them. And that way we become a whole. So that means that you're never truly whole until there's a combination of the male and female. And that includes within a family, it's not whole. And it also includes within the human being themselves. Both men and women have male and female attributes or properties within them. What are you talking about? How can a man have female, feminine? No, he does. And so do women. But what I mean by male and female is the dichotomy of openness versus or outwardness versus inwardness. Outwardness is more of a masculine property. Inwardness is more of a female property. Aggressiveness is more masculine. Timidness is more feminine. And it's the balance between those within the human being that makes them a balanced individual. So a man can be too aggressive. He can be too outward, right? But he needs the balance inside with the feminine aspect, right? You see in the movies all the time how they say like, I'm in touch with my feminine side. That's true, right? And one of the things that I think puts pressure on a lot of people is they have this distorted idea of what it is to be a man. Like in Western societies, men don't cry, men don't show emotion, men will always be courageous and not afraid, right? And if someone picks a fight with them, then they have to fight. And that's what a man, boys have to play with trucks and sports and balls and things, and girls play with dolls. So what happens if I have a boy and he likes to play with dolls? Something wrong with him? Is he in the wrong gender? No, not at all. I used to play with dolls, so what? And I used to play with trucks, I used to play with balls. So there's an aspect, right, where we define masculinity and femininity as much more than just these very narrow-minded kind of definitions that modern society gives. Why? Because when you go by those narrow definitions, then you think, wait, I don't like trucks, I don't like playing with cars, I kind of like dressing up a little bit and looking at houses and having a doll. Maybe I'm supposed to be a girl. No, you're not supposed to be a girl. You're a boy, but you have this side of you that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So the idea in pairs, number one, and number two, that there are both masculine and feminine traits within each one of us. However, certain things will clearly be more belonging to men, and certain things belonging to women. And that, which I'll get to in a little bit, is going to be more about the complementary role in relationship. In other words, men have obligations, women have obligations. So in order to fulfill those obligations, Allah has put within each one of them the particular traits so they can fulfill those obligations. And when we mix those up, right, and we get confused about them, this is when things become off balance. And this is when people become confused about who they are, what their gender is, you know, what's the relationship in the marriage and all that type of thing. So, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, women are the twin halves of men. And he said, شقاقة الرجال. In other words, it's like they were a whole and they got split. So they don't function without one another, in that sense. And the first two human beings ever to be created were Sayyidina Adam and Sayyidina Hawa, Adam and Eve. Right? It wasn't just one, but both of them. And our understanding of even the eating from the forbidden tree, unlike the Christian narrative, is that Eve was not at fault. She didn't entice Adam, alayhi salam. The Quran very clearly says, فَأَكَلَا مِنْهَا. Right? We call this alaf al-ta'nith, which means they both ate at the same time, without assigning blame for one over the other. So they both share in the blame. Rather than Eve enticed Adam, and he made a mistake based upon her enticement. That's not our story. That's not how we are at all. It's not mentioned in the hadith, it's not mentioned in the Quran like that whatsoever. So that's something that's foreign to us, but many Muslims are under the impression that perhaps there's some type of credence to that. So, if we have these pairs, and they're meant to be, then there means anything that is not you, you have what we call a relationship with. So anything that's not you, what's your disposition towards that thing? You have a relationship with it. What you do with it, what you don't do with it, how you treat it, how you speak to it. And I say it because it's not just human beings. We have a relationship with the earth. We have a relationship with the sand on the beach. We have a relationship with the birds who build the nests. These are all things that are relationships. And in the Islamic scheme of things, anytime there's a relationship, two things you have to look at. Obligation and rights, or responsibilities and rights. So that means that thing that's an other to me, it has some type of right upon me. And if it has some type of right upon me because I come into contact with it, that means I have to do my responsibility. Because if I don't do my responsibility, what happens? That thing doesn't get its right. And if it doesn't get its right, this is what leads to oppression, dhulm, fasad fil ard. Right? That's what the Quran describes. When people don't fulfill their rights, others' rights, then you have corruption and you have oppression and you have very many unhappy people. And that's how we find the state that we're in. So that means one thing, one person's right is another responsibilities. So since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us in charge of the earth, which He did, إِنِّي جَعَلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, I am putting a steward of the earth, which is us collectively, then that means we share the greater burden of that. The birds and the wolves and the squirrels and the dolphins are not going to be asked, why did you do what you did? We're going to be asked, why did you do what we did? All the animals behave exactly like they're supposed to. The lion that hunts the zebra, the shark that eats the tuna, they're behaving exactly the way they're supposed to. In other words, they're following the sunnah they're supposed to, because that's what they know. And that's what Allah wants them to do. But we are one of the unique creatures where we can go against that. We can go against what Allah commands us to do. And so as a result, that great responsibility is upon us to do the right thing. So, generally speaking then, even from a very just logical perspective, what's more important? That I get my rights or that I fulfill my responsibilities? You can answer that question. What's more important? I get my rights or I fulfill my responsibilities? Anyone think different? Someone said both.
Yeah.
Both? I said more important. Has to be one. Let me ask you this. Is Allah going to ask us if I got my rights? يعني بمعنى آخر هذا من ضمن التكليف؟ لا, it's not. In fact, it's a fadila, it's a virtue to let go of some of your rights in the interest of a better thing to come along, in the interest of a better good. Why? The Quran says so, وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. أن تعفوا أقرب للتقوى. To give up your right, that's what al-afu means, basically, is closer to taqwa. Why do you think that's so? Why would be giving up my right? There's more taqwa in that. Isn't it my right? Am I to do what I'm supposed to, someone's supposed to do for me? And what's wrong with asking for it? But then why would Allah describe it as closer to taqwa to give that up?
Because you're sacrificing your right for the sake of Allah.
Again?
You're sacrificing your right for the sake of Allah.
What's that mean? Why does Allah care about that? What difference does it make to Him?
It's jihad. It's a form of struggle.
Okay. Anyone else? It's a hard question, but think about it. Let me ask you this then. Let's say I go after my right. Let's say, la qadar Allah, I'm driving down the beach street here and I'm crossing the street and someone hits me by accident and he breaks my leg. And then the lawyer comes and says to me, we're going to get you some good money out of this. He said, we can easily sue for $5 million and they'll settle for like 3. And that's guaranteed. What do you think about that scenario? Did you get your right? Is it possible to get more than your right? Isn't it? Let's say I got the 3 million, but what the damage to my leg, and it put me out of